All right, good evening and welcome to our forum. We're thankful that you're here tonight, and we also welcome Gilman and Reblake to join us. They can see us, but we can't see them, but we're glad they're there. So they're going to hear everything you hear. If you haven't already, please take that pre-evaluation form that was in your packet, open that up and complete it, and we'll have someone coming around later to pick that up from you. If you haven't received one, raise your hand and we'll have someone bring one to you. Okay. And then we need one right down here. Michelle, can you grab one down this gentleman? Thank you. All right, super. Just a brief overview of Taylor County Drug Opposition Partners. We began in the year 2012. A group of considered citizens and some folks at the courthouse got a group together to discuss and develop this group that we have. We have people from different areas of the community that got involved. We have law enforcement. We have some legal representation. We also have churches as well, clergymen. So we have different areas that got together on this board to decide how we can help our youth. At that time, we had a lot of drug cases going through the courts, and we were concerned how we could help our young folks at that time. So we put together this group. We called it Taylor County Drug Opposition Partners, or TCDOP for short. And we're still going strong here. We now run with 2 paid staff that facilitate our programs like this and education items that we do. We get involved with the community by going to area events and trying to educate our community and our students with what's proper and what drugs can do for them, and also the issue of drinking and smoking. Let's move on. There will be a question and answer period at the end of this program. If you have any questions, please jot them down. The other option, and for those of you who are off-site, you have the option to go to the website, type in the code, and list your questions on there. And this is brand new. We're really excited about this. So your questions can be anonymous, and we can still get you your answers from our expert panel here. So our agenda tonight looks like this. We're going to talk about what are opioids, get the legal facts of what they can do to a person, how they work, their effects, the warning symptoms and signs. We're also going to talk about the prescription opioids in Taylor County and how they affect people who are taking them. We have an individual here tonight who will tell her personal story of how they affected her. We have someone here who can talk about treatment, where treatment is locally, how you can find it. Also, the trauma and domestic violence that sometimes comes with people using drugs. And we'll talk about what our coalition is doing, not only our forum tonight, but how else we're reaching the community. And then finally, what you can do as a concerned citizen, and we'll go from there. Our panel tonight, first of all, myself, I am on the steering committee for the Drug Opposition Partners. We also have, I better back up here. We have Cody Kowalczyk from the Sheriff's Department, Michael Borgen from the Director of Emergency Services. And you're out of order, but we have Jen Meyer, who is with Taylor County Human Services. Amber is our personal speaker tonight for her story. We have Courtney Scholl from Stepping Stones, and then Liza DeLayden from our Human Services as well. And they are our panel of experts who have dealt with the issue of opioids in our community, and they'll give you some input of what they've seen. So without further ado, we'll start with Cody. If you want to start us out, that would be great. Thanks.
So to start us out, we got 7 different drug categories when we talk about drugs. As they're all listed up there, you have your depressants. It would be alcohol would fit in that as an example. Some of your prescription drugs would fit into that. Stimulants would be meth or cocaine. Hallucinogens, be your mushrooms or ecstasy. Your dissociative anesthetics, would be PCP and chlorocidin. Your narcotics is what we'll talk about with this presentation. And you got your inhalants and your cannabis, which would be your marijuana. So what is a narcotic? Narcotics are opiates or a derivative that block the perception of pain or affect the emotional response to pain. Narcotics are highly addictive, and it seems to be more and more people are getting addicted to them. Opiates versus opioids. I think most people, when they mention opiates or opioids, they're talking about the same thing. But to explain the difference between the two of them, opiate is natural. It's derived from the poppy plant, which is grown. Opiates are either synthetic or semi-synthetic, which are typically made to imitate the opiates. Your common narcotics, so like I said, your opiates are natural. It's going to be morphine, codeine, heroin, and opium. Those are a couple examples that are listed up there. Your synthetic opioids, mainly they're going to be all prescription drug related. Fentanyl, your oxycodone, OxyContin, hydrocodone, Percocets. Those are going to be some of the more popular ones that we do have as examples. So there's three types of opioids. Generally, what we'll be talking about today mainly is going to be your prescription medications, your prescription opioids, but there also is fentanyl and heroin. We'll talk briefly on fentanyl and heroin here shortly. So there's just a couple pictures there to use as examples of fentanyl. Fentanyl is a synthetic opioid. It's about 50 to 100 times more potent than morphine, which is typically prescribed in some more extreme pain management. Fentanyl can be prescribed by doctors with injection. I commonly see it as patches. However, the fentanyl that is the reason for most of our overdoses or overdose deaths in the U.S. or Wisconsin, that's actually made in labs, and it's made in Mexico and China. Recently, fentanyl has been mixed with other drugs. Commonly in law enforcement, we see it mixed with heroin. It's mixed with heroin because it's in the same drug category as a narcotic, and it's stronger than heroin, and it's cheaper than heroin. It also can be mixed in with cocaine or meth. Problem with that is if there's an individual that is a heroin user and typically knows how much he can use to get high, he or she, if it is laced with fentanyl, that's going to be the issue of our overdoses are a primary cause of overdoses. So the use of opioids in general, especially fentanyl, is on the rise. As you can see there on the graph, we've had a major increase of deaths from overdoses in synthetic opioids from 2013 to 2015. The primary cause of that is going to be fentanyl, which was introduced around the 2013-2014 timeframe. As you can see, the picture on the right shows you just how potent fentanyl is, kind of compares it to some of the other prescription medications out there. See, it also has ibuprofen and aspirin up there. We'll talk shortly about heroin. Heroin is made from the poppy plant. It's highly addictive, and it enters the body very quickly, and it impacts the vital bodily functions such as your heart rate and your breathing. Heroin can also lead to infections, liver and kidney disease, lung problems, and mental health disorders. Just briefly on that last slide, in Taylor County, fortunately, we don't see a lot of heroin and or fentanyl use in our county. Our narcotic use is mainly prescription medications. If you go more in the southern state, there's individuals that are overdosing every day. We don't see that here. It does happen. We have had overdose deaths in Taylor County, but it's not real common. Some common prescription medications that are diverted in Taylor County. There's a list there. You can kind of read through them. Some of our more popular ones that we see would be Vicodin, oxycodone, Oxycontin, a little bit of Suboxone. Just to kind of clarify what diverted would mean, it would be, they were obtained legally through a prescription, and then another individual obtained them, whether it was through a theft or selling or trading. Vicodin is the most widely prescribed drug in America. As you can see up there, the United States makes up 4.4% of the world's population, but uses 80% of all pain pills and 99% of the hydrocodone supply. So it is quite an issue, not only in the United States, but here in Wisconsin and Taylor County. 4 or 5 heroin users previously used prescription drugs, and then they would transition to heroin, which is typically you can get it as stronger, maybe easier to obtain as well. So where are the drugs coming from here in Taylor County? A lot of drugs are being traded, so they're obtained legally. Individual goes to the doctor, obtains their drugs, and prescription medications are as good as currency. A lot of individuals sell them to make money. Individuals trade them for other drugs, meth, cocaine, other prescription drugs. They also trade them for property as well, stolen property. Another way that they're being obtained is they're being stolen, and most commonly taken from either a friend or family's household. 3 and 4 people who start misusing opioids have not even been prescribed them. They obtain them from a friend or a family member. And that kind of makes this a little bit different issue than somebody who might go out and actually buy illegal drugs. Is this one mine too?
You're doing a good job. All right, my name's Mike. I work at the hospital here in town in the ER. Was asked to come and speak a little bit about the effects of the medications on the brain and the body and some risk factors. Cody defined opioids versus opiates. I'm just going to say opioids for now, but opioid medications, morphine, fentanyl, Percocet, Vicodin, street drug heroin, like you mentioned, they work by reducing the perception of pain by binding to an opioid receptor in the brain and body. It takes place at the cellular level. The drugs bind to the receptors in the reward areas of the brain, and it gives a euphoric feeling. Euphoria is a feeling of good, so it takes the pain away or it gives them a high. If they take too much of it, though, it gets into the deep areas of the brain, and that's where you get issues. Then you start seeing some of the complications, and I listed a bunch of them up there on that slide. slower judgment times, dizziness, nausea, vomiting, constipation, slurred speech, depression. The big one that with opioids is people stop breathing, so they go into respiratory failure. The picture on the bottom there shows the receptors. Kind of a small picture, but the little circle fits inside of that mushroom-looking thing. That's where the drug actually binds into the receptor. Effects of opioid medications are fueled by specific receptors in the body. Those receptors are called mu, delta, and kappa receptors. Each receptor has certain effects that it takes place for. Mu receptors deal with respiratory depression and constipation, pupillary constriction. Kappa receptors deal with spinal analgesia, sedation, and excessive constriction of the pupils. Delta is responsible for the release of growth hormones, affective behavior, things like that. The body has its own opioid-like chemicals that will mediate the effects of the opioids. These chemicals that mediate the effects are within the body, so they're endogenous, and they're called endorphins and enkephalins. If the user takes the medication often enough for long enough, their body stops producing the internal chemicals that they need, and then the drug becomes less effective. So what happens is they end up taking more of the drug because it's less effective, and then that amount that is more is less effective again, and then they take more again. So it's a continuous circle, and that's how they get into tolerance and dependence issues. Some risk factors for addiction. People who have mental disorders such as depression or anxiety, living in poverty, family history of addiction or abuse, somebody who suffered from abuse, neglect, or other trauma. And I put in here too that people who are using this type of medication are at increased risk for trauma too, because their reaction times are slower. They could be in car accidents, things like that. Less severe risk factors would be like drug availability. How easy is it to get? Aggressive behavior as a child, major life changes. Somebody broke up, boyfriend, girlfriend broke up, divorce, things like that. Risk factors for addiction. Users may use the drug in inappropriate ways. So there's different types of them. Cody mentioned OxyContin. That's an extended release medication. So that medication is meant to go into the bloodstream a certain amount at a time for an extended period of time, so the person gets the same effect the whole time. Whereas if they take like Percocet, they take that pill and it's an immediate reaction. So they take it, they get the immediate relief, but it doesn't last as long as the OxyContin. When people use it in ways that they shouldn't, like they smoke it, they inject it, things like that, they have increased amount of drug that hits their bloodstream quicker, so it becomes more dangerous. So yeah, if the danger of the medication, the probability of developing dependence is higher if you're using it in a way other than what it's prescribed to be used as. Risk factors for increased harm. These medications, if they're taken in combination with other drugs, it puts the user at an increased risk. Some of the things that we commonly see are alcohol, amphetamines, marijuana, other street drugs, and the benzodiazepine class of drugs, which is sleeping pills, anti-anxiety. Some of those drugs are like Valium, Ativan, Restoril. Chronic pain patients that have sleeping issues are at increased risk for worse side effects or overdose. In 2011, there was 31% of prescription opioid-related overdose deaths involved a combination of opioids and benzos. And then I have some other statistics that 7 of 10 teens that are non-medical users, so meaning that they didn't get the prescription from a doctor the way they were supposed to, they combined those with other drugs and alcohol, putting them at a higher risk. 8 of 10 high school seniors reported using prescription opioid medication. Marijuana and alcohol are the most commonly mixed. Signs and symptoms. So what do we watch out for? Needle marks are, if you're seeing needle marks, you're into it quite a ways. They can be on arms, legs. I've seen people hide them under their tongue, between their toes. They get pretty crafty with that. Constricted pinpoint pupils, so if you're looking at someone and their pupils look absolutely tiny and the next person next to them that don't look that way, that could be a warning sign. Having trouble staying awake or falling asleep at inappropriate times, head nodding during conversations, things like that. Flushed or itchy skin, that's one of the main side effects with these is itchy skin. A lot of times people have itchy nose. You'll see them constantly rubbing their nose like this. Withdrawing from social activities that were once enjoyed. So watch out who they're hanging out with. Has their immediate group of friends changed, and is it the new group of people that they're hanging out with a sketchy crew? Mood swings, impulsive actions and decision making. Those are usually sudden and dramatic, seen as out of character. Engaging in risky activities, visiting multiple doctors for pain-related complaints, skipping school or work. They lie, they are deceitful. Suddenly in need of additional funds or money, or they're giving away personal items. Social media is another big one that could tip people off. And then I put in here too, if you think somebody is using, confront them and talk with them about it, because the quicker that you can catch it, the easier it is to stop it. So what do you do if you come across somebody who is using? Recognize the signs, symptoms, and offer them some help. Talk to them, ask them what's going on. Call the elephant out that's in the room, so to speak. Get them help as soon as possible. And then, depending on how severe the situation is an emergent situation. So if you see, if they're not waking up, we do things in the emergency department that's called like a sternal rub. You'll rub their chest. Will that wake them up? If that doesn't wake them up, we might pinch their fingernail, things like that, to see if we can get them to wake up. Obviously, if they're blue, they're not breathing, things like that, you have to call 911 right away. There's a medication, Narcan. Naloxone is the generic name of it. That's what we give in the emergency department. All the pictures up there are different reversal agents for these types of medications. Since 2017, the Department of Health Services passed a statewide order allowing Wisconsin pharmacists to dispense Narcan without a prescription to a person at risk of an opioid overdose or to a person in a position to help someone experiencing an opioid overdose. But there are some certain criteria, I'm told, and pharmacies have to actually have the mandatory paperwork into the state to be able to do that. FDA also just approved the first generic naloxone nasal spray earlier this week, I was told, and they're planning on making it available over the counter as well. Narcan works very quickly, and it can be the difference of life and death for people. It is available and delivered, if it is available and delivered to a person, and that person wakes up and they look like they're doing better, that does not mean that they shouldn't go to the hospital though. Narcan is short-lived. The effects of that, the person may wake up and they may be talking to you, and then they might be right back out sleeping here shortly because that drug will not outlast what they took. When people wake up after they're given Narcan, it's not uncommon for them to wake up very violently, completely out of character, swinging at people, things like that. So it's important to protect them and protect yourself too. So Narcan would be for the opioids, and then we talked about benzos too. We have different medications we can give for benzodiazepine overdoses too, and that's a different med though. That's called flumazenol. So if somebody's not breathing and they're not doing well, then we're looking at obviously 911, get them into the emergency department, but breathing for them and doing CPR if they don't have a pulse. Usually a narcotic overdose is they quit breathing before their heart stops. So if you can feel a pulse, then you just have to give rescue breaths, and we recommend for an adult it's every 5 to 6 seconds you give a breath. If they don't have a pulse, then you have to do CPR with that. So that's about all I had.
I think you got it. Hi, I'm Jen from Taylor County Human Services. Currently supervising the behavioral health clinic within Human Services. Within that clinic, we use a tool called the Wisconsin Enhanced Prescription Drug Monitoring Program. That tool was developed late 2014 and was mandated just a few years back to be used by individuals who prescribe or who dole out medication, such as a pharmacist, and also can be used by those of us who are delegated to monitor prescriptions being doled out and or law enforcement. The goal of that tool that we use in Wisconsin is to help combat the prescription drug situation that we have going on. They had alluded to before that we have a pretty significant problem in Wisconsin, and we don't hear a lot about it in Taylor County. So I wanted to just kind of give you some data to show you kind of what it is that we see at Human Services. Of about 21,000 people here in the county, there is approximately 12 doses per person in our county every 3 months. What that is equivalent to is 17,000 pills that are doled out in our county to our citizens. Most of those medications are doled out to women between the ages of 25 and 45 years old. So we hear a lot about prescriptions being taken out of our medicine cabinets, perhaps from elderly people, our parents. But the reality of it is those prescriptions also are given to your neighbors, to our friends, to our kids. That's just kind of a pie chart explaining that of all of the prescription opioids in Taylor County. It breaks it down by age. As you can see that there is about 16% of 12-year-olds involved in that range. Kind of the trends that we're seeing are, for example, kiddos who are in sports, say, for example, they're in football, they have an injury, they're prescribed a medication. Somewhere down the line in life is typically when we end up meeting up with them and they have suddenly started on their journey to an addiction of, it really opens up a whole floodgate of other addictions as well. Typically opiates are just kind of the surface. So I have an opportunity to introduce a young lady who I met a few years back, who inspires me every single day to be stronger, to be a better mom, to be a good friend, and just outright strong. And every day I would watch her and I would be amazed by her, and I'd want to be like her. She is a strong individual. She didn't know it, but a few years back, actually, she gave me hope. I was fortunate enough to get to meet and work with her kid. So beautiful and wonderful. And she gave me a gift that inspired me, and I still keep it on my counter, still every single day. And inside this gift, it was just a box, and there's a little note inside, and it says that when things get tough, I want you to put a note in here for something that you want to get better. And I still keep that on my counter, and I look at it every single day. And I truly think people are brought into our life for a reason, to show us that despite all of the really, really tough things that we see every single day, the hope that sometimes feels insurmountable, a mountain we don't think we'll ever climb, that people are put in our path to show us that it's possible and to give us hope and to keep us going. So it is my pleasure to introduce my friend, Miss Ember.
I'm an ugly crier. Just gonna put that out there now. It's gonna happen. But I went back and started to think of how I got here, like physically, like why I'm here tonight. And it is people like Jen, but I have met amazing people through my journey. And tonight I do want to focus on where I am today versus why I'm here today. I'll share a little bit about how I got here, but I want everyone to know my story actually is I'm working on being happy. And last night, a friend of mine said, someone I look up to, I am working on having fun living again. So that is where I am today. But my story, the best part of it started 17 months and 11 days ago. That's the longest I've been clean. And so over this So over this time, I have learned from a lot of people out there. I have made, I don't want to say strange friends, but have come across some really amazing people that have inspired me and made me better. So those are the people you'll hear about through my story that when my crap needs to be called out, they're the first person to say, what the heck? They do it a lot. And when I need help, those are the people that I will just say, I need you today. And they will drop everything. So that is where I am today. But as far as how I got here, I am a very normal family. I have 2 kids, one that's really cool and one that's just normal.
He's also cool.
And then, so as I'm talking to my kids about this tonight, I'm like, I have kids, I have a husband, I'm just normal. And then they're like, well, we have a dog and chickens, and my husband has a poodle. We don't have a dog. He has a poodle. And then my kids, well, my daughter has these chickens she trains and spends time with. So that's where our family is. But my husband, who has been married to me, I did the math today because he's the numbers guy. I will throw up, I'll be like, we've been married 20 years. And he's like, not even close. So we've been married 16 years. Did the math just for him today. But we've been best friends for 20 years. And out of that 20 years, I have used for 10. And he's stuck there. So, normal family, that's just where I am. And talking about cool kids, as I'm telling him this today, and the ugly crying started, my son says, you rock. So I put that in there to share with all of you. It doesn't matter where the support comes from. It's there. So, how it all started was back 12 years ago, I had an ankle injury and I needed surgery. And waiting for this surgery, they prescribed the medication. And as I was taking this medication, I needed more and more to control what I thought was the pain. And it probably was at that point. So as I'm waiting for this surgery and it's scheduled, I find out I'm pregnant. So they put it all on hold and I continue to use this medication. And they switch it up and add more to it, and life happens. 2 kids later, still haven't had surgery. When I finally go in for surgery, it's a big one. It's a total ankle replacement. So I'm in my 20s, and I have a brand new ankle, which wasn't the plan going into surgery. The plan was to clean it up a little, implant some cells. So it was devastating to find out in my 20s that I was so limited on what I could do or what doctors told me I could do. So as the time went, the pain was still in my head. It maybe was cleared up, but I had been using for so long by then that the feeling of taking that medication gave me a relaxed feeling of I can get through today. So I used more, and 9 surgeries later, I was at an all-time high of using anything and everything they'd prescribe. Back when I first started, every doctor would give me a prescription. And if that doctor said, well, maybe we should cut you back a little, I would take his prescription, and then I would see another doctor. And he would write me a prescription. And then he would increase it the next time. And this one was still writing. So when it got to an all-time high, I was probably easily using about 700 pills a week. 100 a day for an hour, easily. And then doctors couldn't figure out why I was moody and why it continued. And I probably knew, but then it's, let's see a mental health doctor. So we added some anti-anxiety medicine on top of it. We added some depression medication on top of it. And it was so easy for me to continue this cycle every month. And I would spend so much time consumed by studying what I could tell a doctor to get the prescription, what new symptoms I have. Oh, the pain is so bad. I missed 2 days of work. I couldn't take care of the kids. I had every excuse in the book. It just continued to cycle. All right. So when I was at my worst or using the most, I think back over, so my kids are 10 and almost 12 now. I think back about their first words, walking, their kindergarten graduation, and I remember sitting in the stands thinking, I wonder if I have enough pills to make the month. I wonder if I've taken 2 extra today, that means the last 2 days I have to take 2 less. Like, this is what consumed me, not her first word being, I don't know what, because I didn't care back then. Didn't care. I was not a good mom. So, all those medications I talked about, tried them all. Tried them in many combinations, and many more of them. My list is extensive. It wreaks havoc on, like, even now, if I think back, trying to come up with those memories, they don't exist. So as it went on, I hid it from my husband, who we did everything together. He was the only one I would let in. We didn't have people to our house. My kids don't have friends over because I can't let people see this that I knew at that point was too much. So if I had to watch someone else's kid, then that would consume this many more pills because this was too anxiety filled for me, or I'd have to chase them around so the pain would be worse. Like, I have already psyched myself up knowing that these extra activities took that. And as those feelings came in, it was easy to self-sabotage and talk myself into regret and self-hate. And it didn't matter. I was easily able to justify why I was taking that medication. Life was tiring. Everything was hard about it. Getting up in the morning, getting my kids dressed. I tried the stay-at-home mom thing when they were little. My husband took the kids to the sitter most days because I was too tired to take care of them. I was a stay-at-home mom who had a sitter. I think that the thing I want to share about that part of the story, though, is that on the outside, I was very functional. I was at my kids' school stuff. I made sure they were to school on time. I made sure they were ready to go to daycare. All those things happened. So the only person that maybe had the opportunity to know is my husband. But he saw me when he wasn't not working. So 8 hours, plus we had kids that he had to take care of because I wasn't doing it. So he didn't have the opportunity to call me out of my crap because I left everything on him. Where are the brown Kleenexes? Not good. Okay. That's the ugly truth of it, like how much I was using, what I wasn't doing, but how functional society thought I was. I had this moment, and I don't know if other people that get clean have that moment, but I had it. And to this day, I still dislike this person, but she's the one that pretty much turned it around for me. I was at the pharmacy filling my third or fourth prescription for the month, I'm sure, and it was a day early. I called the doctor, gave him some sob story, and they said, sure, fill it early. It doesn't matter. What's one day? Well, this had become a habit. I was going out of town. My husband was in town and wanted to pick it up. I, only would be in town today from this time to this time. And they were pretty accommodating. So they'd call the pharmacy, say, yep, release it a day early. I would get there, and they would always have it ready, except for this day. The pharmacist said, this is a pattern I've noticed in your chart. I'm not filling it till tomorrow. If you think 2-year-olds can have a tantrum, should have seen a grown woman who wanted her prescription. I had this biggest meltdown. I yelled at the lady. I told her she was incompetent at her job. She has no right to withhold that. I did it all. Wasn't a proud moment, but that was my moment when I could say, wow, there is something the matter. So I had that moment, and then by this time I had found that I had changed kind of my routine and habit. So instead of just home and work, now I had added the gym, which you guys will hear a little more about, but the gym is somewhere where I feel safe. And so I told my trainer that this is what was going on. I don't think to the depth that I probably should have, but I don't know. Can you still hear me? I'll try to be loud. So I went to my primary doctor and said, I need to get off these. And he couldn't help me through it. He had in the past already said, no, I'm not going to prescribe to you because I see you have all these doctors. That was my error. When I went to all these doctors, when they ask you if you have a primary, I always said yes. And then he got all my records. And so I was caught. And he said, Ember, we have something more in our hands than just stopping. So he turned me to the right people, and that was my journey. Like, withdrawal week, the first week was rough. And I would go to my safe spot, and I was working out, and I told my trainer I hated him. I was tired. I didn't want to work. I actually love the guy, not going to lie. But he said, I don't care if you hate me today. We're going to finish and push through this. And that was the moment I knew that I wanted to push through it because someone else believed in me. It wasn't just me and my husband at that point. It was another person knew I could do it. So for months, I'm a talker to death. So we probably talk around the same subject even tonight more than we need to. But he will listen to me week after week rant on the same thing. Just listens. Sometimes calls me out of my crap if it's really crap. But it always gives me that outlet. So sometimes you will find me at the gym, even when it's not training day, just to hang out there, because that is a safe space for me. I will come in, talk to a few people, and get out of there without even working out because I didn't want to. It happens more than I should admit. But it changes my mood because I know these people help me through. Like, that's me asking them for help. And they do. Every one of them there. So as the healing process went on, I started to evaluate some of my bad qualities. So I knew I was being selfish. I knew that I was obsessive. So these bad qualities I had to take and know that I can't change everything about me because they were there for a reason. So now I've changed my obsession to goal chasing. I love to go see how amazing I can be at something else. Life used to be just separated from work, from home, from outside. Like I never let any of them intermingle, where now I don't have much of a filter. I let everything be pretty transparent because then I think people realize when I need help or need that extra just hand. So I easily go and ask for help when I need it now. And that's important. Okay, we're almost done. When I knew I made it this time, like I've tried to be clean before. I did. This time though, I knew I made it when I started being realistic. I used for the better portion of 10 years. I've only been clean a year and a half. That's a baby step. And I know that. So that's my realistic, like, check. I have realized that I can easily turn one addiction to another. And so I make sure that I don't get on that road. So just for instance, drinking. I've gone out drinking twice since I've gotten clean. And each time I was way too many for the night. And I know now that that is probably easy for me to do in anything I do. So I'm just conscious of the road I'm on. If I do have a destructive act in the past, I let that take me down and know that I have failed. Where now I'm like, you know what? It's one crappy hour, one crappy day. Tomorrow will be better because I have the tools. I like being me now. I just like me, where I couldn't say that before. I'm thankful every day. I'm happy every day. Not happy every moment, but there are things within every day that I can find both of those things in. I'm honest with the people around me. I say I have like this weekly accountability check, but it's more like daily. And it's good. It keeps me thinking about where I want to be and not who I used to be. And the last thing that I knew that I made it is I had to visit the doctor a couple weeks ago because I had an injury at the gym, I thought. Turned out not to be. Turned out I had shingles. And the first thing they did, they offered me a nerve medication and opiate to go with it. And they were both on my list of things I loved. I loved the high from it. And the gabapentin for my nerves gave me the greatest, like, euphoric feeling. Loved it. And I got to say to that lady, I'm sorry I can't take those, and this is why. And I knew at that moment that that was me being strong all by myself. So that's how I knew. Okay, so if you take a few things from my blabbering here, it's everybody's journey is different, whether it's your weight loss or because you're using drugs or, you know, life just threw you some crappy stuff. It's everybody can come back from it. You just have to do it by baby steps. I know that mine will stick because I have a plan. I have people in place. I have made better connections. I feel accountable. I make most of my life choices on what makes me happy today, knowing that that in turn will keep me on the right path. I didn't do it alone. There are so many people that I probably didn't even mention today, and I just didn't. So one plug for my husband before I wrap it up is he says this thing to me when I come home and I am complaining and just crabby. He's like, I am proud of you today for nothing more than just holding it together. So I always know that I've stepped one line too far at home when he has to say that to me, but I know that he's proud that he can rein it back in a little. And the hardest part is really just finding the courage to start. That's it. Ugly crying over. Thank you. That's it.
we ask questions?
Great story, Ember, by the way.
Thank you.
So because you were on prescription drugs, do you feel that you weren't really addicted because they were prescribed to you?
No, it was okay until it wasn't okay. So the first few years was probably okay, like I was taking them as prescribed. But when it came to the point where I was taking more than prescribed or dumping a doctor because he wouldn't give me what I wanted, I knew at that point that there was a problem. But it still wasn't a problem. And so, yeah, it was okay until it wasn't. So no, I definitely knew. I knew better.
On your chart not to prescribe you those medications?
No. No, well, here's the fine line that you run with that. So I have a total ankle replacement. I had that in my 20s. I've had a revision surgery 2.5 years ago, so they prescribe more medicine. My ankle is slated to last about 6 or 7 years in someone my age, so I will have to have it done again. So if every one of those medications are on my chart that I can't take, you have to control pain somehow. So I think you just need to be more honest with a doctor, and there are ways. There are other, a pain pump, a nerve block. And your body needs that pain. If there is still pain, there's obviously more wrong than just because you want the pills.
Can I add to that? Mm-hmm. So in regards to charts per se, the prescription drug monitoring program, we can access that at any point in time, and it will show me an alert that I have to report to the prescriber. So anybody that at this point in time that either fills their prescription early or they can see a pattern, they'll red flag it for us, and so then we have to either alert the prescriber or I guess refer that person to treatment if we're working with that person in a different capacity. But that's just changed probably within the last 1.5, 2 years that we can see that now.
All right, I guess I'll follow that up. We'll go over Narcan a little bit. Mike already kind of went through it. Narcan is an antagonist drug developed in the 60s. It's used to counter effect the opiate overdose. Specifically used to counteract depression of the central nervous system and the respiratory system. Most overdose cases that do not result in death the individuals were saved by the use of Narcan. The way it works is it blocks the opiate receptor sites, which reverses or prevents toxic effect of narcotics. Again, Mike kind of went over when you administer the Narcan, your OD victims will wake up within minutes. He mentioned oftentimes they're angry because they lost that high that they did have. It displaces the opiates from the brain receptors for 30 to 90 minutes. It can be carried by law enforcement and EMS, non-medical personnel. I'm assuming all EMS has it. I know law enforcement, every one of our officers, deputies, we do carry it on our person or in our squads. How to recognize an overdose? If an individual is unconscious and you can't wake them up, again, when you use a narcotic, it shallows your breathing or it stops your breathing. So if the individual isn't breathing or is really shallow, possibly the color of his or her face turning blue, you may have a possible overdose. Some actions to take would be to shake and shout. Also use a sternum rub. Again, what you'd probably want to do is call 911, even if you do have Narcan, and it does reverse the overdose. An individual probably should go to the hospital.
So in regards to treatment, there's also a long-acting injectable called Vivitrol. It also can be taken orally, called naltrexone. Vivitrol or naltrexone is a non-addictive prescription medication that it prevents relapse technically by blocking the opioid receptors in the body. So when individuals are addicted to opiates and they are on Vivitrol or naltrexone, it blocks that high. So even though they may have used, they're not going to have that feeling, which then there's no reward to using. There is a risk with that, of course. Even though it helps stop the cravings, the risk is that because it's blocking that high, that feeling that normally comes from using that drug, it also means a risk of overdose, which is why state statute mandates that there's a clean urine drug screen 7 to 14 days prior to being prescribed that medication. So Vivitrol is a good thing, and we use it a lot in the clinic where I work. We do have a drug treatment court where individuals utilize that, but it's truly not for everyone. There are definite risks that come with that. So it also can be used for other addictions as well. So individuals that would also possibly be just addicted to, say, alcohol. They're also looking at it for studies, people that are addicted to sugar or carbs. So that is interesting to me. I might be interested in that, that's what I'm saying. Case study. Case study. Something else that we work a lot with is medication-assisted treatment. We don't have a clinic here in town or in the county that utilizes medication-assisted treatment. They're very specialized. However, we refer people to both Wausau and Eau Claire. Medication-assisted treatment clinics offer different medications to assist people in their recovery from opioid addiction. One of those medications is called methadone, so you'll often hear it be referred to as the methadone clinic. Methadone is something that just tricks the brain into thinking that they're still getting the drug of choice. It keeps the person from going into withdrawal. There's a lot of controversy about that sort of medication, so a lot of people feel like sometimes you're trading one substance for another. However, there's a lot of benefits, and the goal is to gradually wean people off of the opioid medication that they're addicted to. There's also another medication called buprenorphine, which is also a cravings reducer. Typically, it comes in a pill or sublingual tablet that people put under their tongue. There's also, they talked a little bit about naltrexone earlier. So naltrexone really helps with avoiding relapse, takes away those cravings, prevents that euphoria that you typically get. I guess at Human Services, we have a prescriber that can prescribe naltrexone, so it's not common for a lot of prescribers to do that. They have to have a specialized license in order to provide that. But we do see that often. We have a lot of individuals that come through that like to, as they were kind of alluding to before, use both the meth and their heroin, or meth and or an opiate substance called speedballing. So we see a lot more of that than we would like, and that's typically where that comes in. But again, it needs a clean urine sample in order to have that prescribed to that person, and the state monitors that very closely.
All right, hello, my name is Courtney and I am from Stepping Stones here in Medford. And for those of you that are not aware, Stepping Stones is an agency that works with victims and survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault. All of our services are free and confidential, and I would say due to the confidentiality that we have with the people we work with, we're able to get a very intimate portrait of their life when they come in to share their stories with us and seek support. We provide emotional support. We can connect them to community resources. We can help with emergency housing when they're looking to leave an unsafe situation. So we see men, women, children. We'll work with them all. And we're really seeing how individuals and families are being affected in our community by substance use. So there is definitely a relationship between substance use and domestic violence. One does not necessarily cause the other. There's no evidence to prove that. They're different problems with multiple causes, but you do often see them occur together. So when somebody is going through an unhealthy relationship and experiencing violence, that can be very traumatic. And when somebody goes through trauma, it can really increase their risk for substance use. Sometimes people might turn to it as a way to cope with what's going on in their life. And also, when somebody experiences trauma throughout their lifetime, that can also really take a toll on their health. So sometimes you'll see people that we've worked with that are definitely being prescribed these medications pretty extensively due to the trauma that they've experienced in their life. One thing to know that we always talk about at Stepping Stones is domestic violence is a lot about power and control over a partner, and there are so many different kinds of abuse. It's not just physical abuse, and it's been really interesting to see how substance use has really weaved itself into the violence that we're hearing about in our community. I started as an advocate in 2014, and even in that short period of time, we have definitely seen an increase in people coming in dealing with not only the violence they're experiencing, but with mental health issues and a lot of substance use. So it's, from what I've heard from other advocates around the state, because there are a lot of places like Stepping Stones in different counties in Wisconsin, it's not your mother's shelter anymore. So we have communal shelter. And seasoned advocates that have been doing this years ago said that, you know, people are coming in with just the issue of abuse, and it was something that they could deal with because that's what we specialize in. We could help them learn how to cope and find a safe way to move forward, or if people choose to stay in a relationship, find ways to help keep them safe. But now, when you add substance use into the mix, we have definitely had a lot more challenges in shelter. We're definitely sympathetic to people who are experiencing substance use, and due to the nature of what we do, people are really trusting us and giving us an intimate look into their life. So actually a lot of people are upfront about substance use if it's something they're struggling with or if their partner is. So we're very fortunate to have that relationship with them where they can trust us to have that conversation. One thing is we definitely let them know that we're not here to judge them. We're not here to judge them for being in an unhealthy or unsafe relationship, and we're not here to judge them with how they are coping with the trauma they're experiencing. Abuse is never someone's fault. No one deserves to be abused. And we want to let them know that they're not alone in their journey, and they're definitely not alone in using or in seeking help. There are a lot of resources out there. Excuse me, I'm going to get a drink here. To bounce back to the shelter a little bit more. We are very fortunate. We've had some great conversations with law enforcement here. Sometimes after people leave, if we knew that there may have been an issue with prescription medications or other substances, they've come through with the dogs to make sure that nothing's left behind, because especially when you're dealing with things like opioids and some of these substances, like when you're thinking about opiates, like with the powders, that's not something that's easy to identify. So they've helped us ensure that we have a safe environment. Our staff has also gotten training from law enforcement, so are better able to identify the signs of someone who is under the influence, which has been really helpful. Because when people are staying in shelter with you, you're sharing that space with them. That's their home during that time. And there's definitely been some times where we've noticed something seemed off with the person, so we'd sit down and have a conversation with them and let them know that our services are always available to them. But like we said, something like abuse is not what we specialize in. So we always we offer other community resources so that they can seek treatment or help if they choose to. And we also have been trained at Stepping Stones in Narcan use. That has been a conversation over the past couple years that's been had around the state by a lot of different shelters, because they're all seeing this trend of opioid and opiate abuse. So we decided that we would rather have our staff trained and be able to administer in the event that somebody were to overdose in our shelter. Thank goodness we've never had to use it. Unfortunately, I do know that some shelters have experienced overdose deaths in their shelters. So this is a very serious issue, and we're definitely talking about it a lot more in the work that I do. Like I said, what we do is we're not there to judge people, we're there to empower people. We want to encourage their strengths and healthy decision making, which I think is important whether you're dealing with violence or you're dealing with substance use. Safety planning, like as I stated, we're not just talking with them about how to physically stay safe, but also emotionally. So if we know that substance use is something they're dealing with, we can talk with them about maybe other ways they can cope, brainstorm with them to maybe find people that they could call if something happened in the relationship and they felt like they had wanted to use. I know we have some amazing staff, and they've definitely offered to, if somebody was having a rough weekend, to come over and just sit with them for a while. And hopefully that feeling of them wanting to use would pass. Some of the other stories that I've heard actually too are really shocking. I think, like I stated, the way that drugs have really weaved into the work we do. I've heard of a husband who, unfortunately, the couple was using marijuana, and the husband started to lace the marijuana with harder drugs like heroin so that their partner became physically dependent on them, and they had that power and control over them because they had the substance. I've heard of abusers in our area who have forced their partner to go into an unsafe situation where other people are using drugs to sit there, to use that as blackmail. You were there too, so you can't tell on me now. It's been very eye-opening, but like I said, I'm so thankful that these people trust us enough to have these conversations with us. But it's really been unreal. Like I said, in the short time that I've been there, the way that substance use has really come to the forefront of a lot of the conversations that we've had. Some shelters around the state, the way that we're looking at it now, when people come in looking for health, it's almost more often, you don't want to assume that people are using, but it's a conversation that you have up front, because it is so common that people who have experienced abuse and trauma sometimes have a relationship with substance use. So it's something that is talked about very openly in the work we do now as opposed to when I first started. And I would say the best way that we can help victims and survivors affected by substance use, and anyone affected by substance abuse, is really by working together as a community, because the work that the agency I'm with does and the work that everyone here is doing is, our end result is we really all are hoping to create a healthier, safer community. So I'm really glad that we have all these people here that we can turn to when we need some extra help.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Liza DeLayden. I work at Human Services with Jen. I work in the Children and Family Unit. So I want to talk a little bit about how I got involved with TCDOP and why it's so important to me, and then we'll talk about what we can do and what we are doing with our organization. So I became involved with the Taylor County Drug Opposition Partnership back when it started due to my concerns about the increase in substance abuse among our youth and families in our community. This use was so destructive to the safety and well-being of our youth and families, and was causing our child and family caseloads and youth justice caseloads to significantly increase. Our out-of-home placements of children were increasing, and our success in reunifying children back into the homes was beginning to decrease. We were and continue to struggle with addicted youth and parents who commit crimes, lose housing, fail at education, cannot maintain employment, and are not succeeding in their lives. We've hired additional staff to assist with these cases, but we continue to have high caseloads, with almost every case touched one way or the other by substance abuse. Because of my work, I saw this drug opposition partnership as a way to assist our community in addressing these tough issues, a way to get involved with community education and prevention to fight substance abuse in our community. I can tell you that this partnership has done some very important work since their beginning. I believe this work has positively impacted our community's substance abuse problems. I think that community awareness of this issue has increased, and we have begun to see a reduction of some substance abuse in our community. We still have a long way to go, but we're making a difference and definitely heading in the right direction. So that leads me to what we're currently doing to work on awareness and prevention, because that's really our main focus. So we have a lot of, I guess, articles, interviews, reports, features. If you look in the shopper or listen to the radio, our coalition started a Drug a Month campaign since January 2019. So you'll hear about every month a different substance that is focused, and that's in the shopper, the radio, and also on the local bank billboards. There's a new drug every month, and opioids will be featured this summer. We've had a lot of community education. We had specific prescription opioid presentations. We did 5th and 6th graders at the Medford School District, where they learned about reading their medication labels and using medications as prescribed. Our staff have been to the senior sites and talked with senior citizens about pain management and just kind of educating them about opioids and their use and disposal of opioids, because that tends to be the place where most people get them, are from family members. We have a medication drop box that's located at the Sheriff's Department on the ground floor in the data record office. So between 8:30 and 4:30 every day, that's a place people can come and dispose of their prescription medications that they no longer need. They're encouraged to put those in a plastic Ziploc bag versus their bottles, just so that their personal information isn't on those. We also get involved with the take-back days with the Sheriff's Department and pharmacies. We do that twice a year. The next one is May 4th at the Clean Sweep Day. So that's at the fairgrounds from 8 to 11. We were able to get these drug deactivation units, which are super helpful for people who maybe aren't going to be able to get to any of the drop sites. You can pick them up here, we have them here, or you can come to Human Services and get them. But basically, you just put your medications in here, and they hold a lot, like 45 pills, 6 ounces of fluid, or 6 patches. And then you fill the pouch halfway with warm water, and you wait 30 seconds, shake it, and seal it, and throw it away. So that's a really useful tool. And then we also just started with these mail-in packages where you can put your medications in their prescription bottles and just mail them in. So that's a safe way to dispose of those. No sharps, though. We do have all across the county. There are containers that you can dispose of sharps safely. Let's see. So we really focused on educating and being aware of disposing old medications that, again, most users seem to get them from family or friends. So just making sure that they're locked up, that they're disposed of. People purchase, if they need them, they keep them away from children. There's lock boxes that you can purchase at Amazon or Walmart, but just keeping them, being aware of what's in your medication cabinets and keeping them safe. Another thing, you'll find these in your folders or also up front are, if you have children, here's a brochure that gives you some ideas, because it's kind of hard to talk to kids about this concern. So this is a really good brochure that can walk you through it, and on the back there's a link that has even more information just to help you talk to kids about the dangers of opioids. So again, we're really focused on educating and awareness. Talking things you can do. You can talk to your organizations, your clubs, your boards. When you're in to see the doctor, really think about talking to your doctor about pain management options other than opioids. Like Ember said, sometimes they're necessary, but if you can get away with managing your pain in safer ways, I think that it really is important to talk to your physician about those concerns. And also just getting involved. If you really concerned about this, getting involved in our organization, the hospital clinic, human services, mentoring programs, anything that you think that would be helpful. I think those are things that you can do. We also suggest reaching out to local legislators if you're concerned about this. The more that we talk to them about our concerns and about this epidemic, the more that they can then take that forward and work on, we need more treatment and just increasing the awareness among communities. Let's see. If you see somebody, I think Mike talked about this, but if you see somebody with symptoms and you're concerned, to reach out, don't ignore that. Reach out, talk to them. Make sure that you ask them if they need help. And we as an organization is a really good, we're a good start place to come to us, and we can get people to treatment if they need it. And I think just being here tonight, being interested and being involved, I think that those are the important things to take away from our forum tonight. So thank you.
All right, so now it's question and answer time. Is there anybody in the audience or from our outlying areas that have a question for any of our panel group up here. Anything that you'd like to know? Any questions? Yep, okay. We're going to get a microphone to you, all right? Okay.
I believe my son is addicted to opioids. And my question to you is when you started to wean off the drug, what happened to your body and what did you do?
First thing I'm going to say is if you think he is, he is. I went through a doctor. So I got a medication that helped reduce, or what they told me reduce some of the symptoms. I'd like to call bull crap on it, but I'm sure it did. I got the shakes. I threw up, fever. Like it's the worst pain that I could probably imagine. But I kept remembering every day was better, and some days weren't. But I remember even being 2 or 3 or 4 months in and saying to Adam that I still think about it. So it's a long process, but I went through the doctor and I just kept being honest about it even when it was hard. So the withdrawal symptoms are probably the worst. It was hard sleeping. It's hard.
That's really good that you decide to stop.
All right. Do we have any questions from Blake or Gilman?
Yes. Question number 1 was, can you overdose on using naloxone when you give it to somebody?
To my knowledge, no, you can't. I mean, we've given it multiple times. Like I said before, somebody will overdose. They'll come in. We'll give them the Narcan. They'll start coming out of it, or maybe they don't even come out of it the first time. So we give them a second dose right away. Usually, what we do is we'll only do that so many times though. In the ER, we'll give them 5-6 doses maybe, and if they haven't come out of it by then, we're putting a breathing tube in them and we're breathing for them, because we could chase that all day at that point. We don't know how much they've taken, what medication they've taken, how long are the effects of the medication they've taken. So it just kind of becomes a process of we don't know what we're chasing sometimes. So what we'll do is we'll just breathe for them.
Okay, thanks. Do you have another one for us?
Yes. I guess this would be for Ember or Jen. In a moment where you think somebody is using, what is the best way to approach them to help them?
I'm going to give that to Ember because she has that lived experience and she guided me on that. So I'm going to hand that over to her, and then I'll tell you, I guess, what we've done in the past.
I think everybody's experience is different, and I don't think a person needs to be ready to quit, because I don't think anyone wants to use. I think everyone has that little inkling that says, I wish it wouldn't have got this far. But I look back, and there were times in those 10 years that things happened that at that point, if someone would have called me out on it, I may have quit earlier. And when the pharmacist called me out on it and said, we're not going to fill this, you have an issue, you have a problem, I wasn't ready to quit that day. I knew it was hard and going to be hard. So I don't know if there's a right time to approach someone. I think you just need to have that hard conversation and plan for all the different possibilities. Either they're going to be accepting of it, or a gentleman told me one time when I told my family before I did this how bad it was. And my sister said, I knew. And I was angry that she knew all those years. But he said to me, if she would have said something, what would you have done? And at that point, I probably would have cut her out because she was being nosy. Wasn't her business. I wasn't ready. So I don't know if there is a perfect time, but you have to do it often until it's the right time, is my experience.
So historically, I guess in my office, I just put it on the table. I'll just say, it appears to me you're under the influence of opiates. Do you use opiates? What's kind of going on? Truly, that person sitting in front of me is just that. It's a person. It could be any of us at any point in time. They may or may not be willing to talk about it. The tool that I alluded to before, the PDMP, will show me and show them that if there is an issue, it will show up there and it will tell them. So typically I'll say, gosh, I can see that we have an issue. Please know that there's treatment. Please know that that's exactly what we're here for. When you are ready, by all means, we will be here to support you along that journey and figure out this path with you. Typically, I'm always also prepared because, as Ember has alluded to, not everybody's ready to hear that. That can sometimes be a very dangerous situation. And I always have a safety exit if I'm planning to do that. So making sure that you keep yourself safe, because that could be a very bad situation. But it's always best just to put it on the table and have a plan. So.
Did you have any more questions? No? All right. Derek, do we have time for more?
We can do one more, yeah.
Okay. Anybody else out there? I see a hand up.
Are psychiatric treatment services available in Taylor County? And if so, how do your agencies use it?
Okay. Did you hear that, Jen? Okay.
Absolutely. In our agency, psychiatric services are provided. We have an individual, a psychiatrist that comes to our agency to provide that. He is somebody who does prescribe the naltrexone. Not everybody has that ability, but he does. So he comes to our agency. I believe Aspirus also has a psychiatrist that is available to them via telehealth. So there are options. We do, if for some reason the urge is, the need is more imminent than what we can provide, we typically will connect that individual with other resources that are close, maybe a psychiatrist in Wausau that has an earlier opening. Truly whatever it takes, because if that person is ready, we want to hit it now. We can't wait, because that door swings pretty quickly. So.
Anybody else have a question? Okay. Got one right there. Okay. Okay. Can you holler that out for us?
I'm wondering if inpatient treatment is used for opioids, and if so, where are the treatments?
Okay, so inpatient treatments.
Absolutely. Great question. We often use inpatient treatments. And truly, there are a number of them. Unfortunately, in Taylor County, we do not have inpatient treatment for that. We typically will refer out to Wausau, Eau Claire, the Fond du Lac area, Milwaukee, Madison. Milwaukee, Madison has a great deal of them. Green Bay, the larger cities typically have much more access, many more facilities that we can utilize. Unfortunately, the cost is quite high. For example, a one-day inpatient stay is about $1,500. It kind of ranges between $400 to $1,500 a day, depending on where somebody goes. Typically, inpatient is not a covered service if somebody has insurance. Though that system is kind of being relooked at. So there are a couple facilities that do accept insurance. Typically what happens is the county will fund someone's stay with the indication that they pay them back. Most inpatient treatments are about 30 days to the most I've seen is about 6 months. So at $400 to $1,500 a day, that gets pretty expensive. But at some point in time, you have to decide what is the cost of that person's life. And if it was your kid, if it was your sister, if it was your friend, does it matter? So.
Just have one more comment, and that is I heard that Family Health Center has started opioid clinics in the area.
So the state actually has made a huge push for opioid or medication-assisted treatment facilities. I believe they have opened up 4 in the area. I believe Minocqua is up in that area close to, between Minocqua, Rhinelander, there's one. I believe also Eau Claire area has another one that recently opened. And then 2 south as well. FHC, of course, is an insurance, an income-based insurance that allows people to access treatment at a lower cost, hopefully. But it's typically an income-based situation. So there are 4 that are very, very new. Some of them are gender-specific. So if you identify as female, you would be able to go to certain facilities versus the other.
Okay, and I saw one more hand up. If we'll take one more question then.
It was just more of a follow-up to the last question of, are the state and the county kind of taking a look at the prevalence of drug abuse? And through my schooling, we've been learning more about methadone and Suboxone, and how hard it is for people that really do want to seek treatment, where they're traveling 2 hours every day just to get help with it, and how hard that is for a lot of them if they don't have transportation and managing job and life in general. So it kind of answers my question if they're looking at making more centralized locations for people to receive help if they need it.
Okay, did anybody want to follow up on that? Janice? Okay.
Not that it all has to be my turn. But yeah, indeed, a grant actually, again, the state is really pushing and providing a lot more grants for more facilities to open up, smaller facilities in more rural areas where people can access that without having to travel 2 hours. Most MAT clinics demand that you live within a certain mileage or a range because of the diversion issue. So if you were to take that pill and give it away, they need you to be coming back every day instead and watching you take that. But the state is really pushing for smaller, more available rural clinics. So you'll probably see that coming closer and closer.
Thanks. If you have additional questions, our panel will be up here for a few minutes afterwards. If you want to ask something more one-on-one, personal, confidential, feel free to do that. Derek, did you want to share anything before we leave?
Just a couple, thank you.
Okay. Derek is our lead of our program here, so I'll let you share that.
Just want to make sure that I thank a few people before. First of all, let's give one more round of applause for our amazing panel here tonight. So just really quickly, just want to honor your time, but just a couple people to say thank you to. Jill Liebert, the principal here, as well as Andy Gooden for allowing us to have this space for the evening. Kirsten Bedimula, as well as John Hess out in Rib Lake and Gilman for allowing us to use their spaces out there and allowing us to get the live stream. Speaking of live stream, the trio back there, Rich, Mike, and Matthew, for doing a great job and getting us all the signals and all the technology working out to all those 3 places. Thank you to Karen from the radio, Brian, Wilson, and Kelly from the newspaper for getting coverage out and for hopefully pulling you guys in here today. Great big thank you to all our coalition members who helped out there and helped along here on the panel tonight. You're awesome, and I appreciate you, as well as the folks who helped in Gilman and Rib Lake. Thank you, Melissa Moore, with your expertise on planning a forum, as well as thank you to all of you, because we wouldn't have a forum here tonight if you guys weren't here. So we appreciate your help. Marlena just passed around some evaluations, so if you could take a couple of minutes minutes to fill them out. Yes, they are the exact same as the other ones, so your eyes aren't quite deceiving you yet. If there's any pens or anything like that going around, we have limited pens, so if you could share, that would be great. Check out the resource table, the hiding in plain sight room if you would like. I'm sure there's food here that's still out there, and there's food still out in Rib Lake and Gilman, I'm sure, so grab some there before you go. Again, the panelists will take a couple minutes to stay up here and answer any individual questions you might have, and with that, thank you again for coming, and have an awesome evening.